5 days just happened, and I don't even know what all happened.
I don't even remember I just remember where I was yesterday, barely. Because it's like they fly by and you just kind of, it's a wash.
Yeah.
It's a blur.
How can we change this? What are we doing wrong? What do we need to do differently?
Journal so we can remember what we did the day before.
Okay. Dear diary, today was Wednesday.
Right.
And, I saw this really cute guy.
I had to do a book report.
Hope he's in my class next year.
Yeah. I'm like, how can we recap our week? Well, you know what was really funny this week? And
What?
It was a podcast.
Oh, yeah, we did have fun recording that.
No, when I listened to.
Oh, when you listened to. I don't know.
I always, Dave and Dana.
Oh, I loved that.
Do you laugh hard when.
I do.
Like you really intentionally laugh?
I do.
Too. It's not.
I forget who they interviewed, or was this the one that they do on their own? Because they do two different
They did
ones.
interview.
Oh, they did interview.
This is the Superfly.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I did listen to both of them.
So who did they interview? Do you even remember?
I don't remember.
Of course
I just
not.
remember their one-liners and their jokes, and they're so witty and quick.
Yeah.
And that's when I am driving through God knows where, and I just start laughing.
I know. Well, that's their job. But I guess that plays into something I just read I just saw a headline. It came from the Weather Channel. I'm sure I could find a better source, but it said, what did it say? I just read it, so of course I don't remember it. It said, COVID may cause more than brain fog. It may actually have lowered people's IQs. And that was a comfort to read that.
Oh, wasn't that? Now everyone's going to be testing their IQ.
Well, I already feel that it's dropped since I had COVID in 2020.
God.
Maybe there's some validity to it. All right, enough of that, because I'm starting to feel like I'm going to have to journal so I can remember what we did.
Just a few highlights of the prior day.
Thank heavens we're at least capturing some things here on tape,
Right.
right? Or whatever.
And then next week we'll listen to it to remember what we did the week before.
Right. We just have to have audio memories. Okay. All right, let's get into our topics for today. Holly, do you want to lead off?
We are going to talk about a really huge topic where there's so much information, I wasn't even able to consolidate very much of it.
Oh.
So it could go one way or another as we converse. We're going to talk about the problem with plastics that have seeped into all of our lives every day, all the time, 24 hours, and the dangers, the problems, and what we can do. It's a concern, and it
For
leads
every
us...
person on Earth.
Absolutely, every person on Earth. And it leads us to lots of questions on why, when, how. First of all, plastics, they're just killing us in so many different ways, aside from diseases that people probably get from environmental reasons and wildlife, etc. So I'm going to quote a couple of articles that I found regarding some facts about the damages that plastics do to our Earth. And then we'll come up with some solutions. So the first bit of information is from U.S. PIRG, which I already forgot what PIRG stands for. Lisa?
Public Interest Research Group, I think.
Okay, I think you're right. I couldn't even remember that from 2 minutes ago.
Public Interest Research Group, which is it's an organization. It's an advocate for the public interest. I've been following them for years, and they take up all kinds of causes. Plastics is one of their main ones.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest companies in the United States, I'm just talking about the United States now, because every country has their own issues with plastics, and that gets too big for me to handle. For example, Amazon generated enough plastic waste to circle the earth hundreds of times in the form of air pillows. Well, just think about how big Amazon has gotten in the last 10 years, from 0 to 60. Everything's wrapped in plastic when you receive it. So here's this big company that totes itself on electric vehicles, but yet uses a huge amount of plastics. Coca-Cola, a lot of things are made in plastic. Their bottles, their packaging, etc. They're another big user.
Well, any soft drink.
Oh, you're right. Any soft drink. I guess because they're one of the biggest bottlers and they carry so many brands.
True.
Whole Foods, who you think, oh my gosh, Whole Foods? They're on the list. They charge for bags. I believe they charge for bags. They don't use as much, but they are a big user of plastics.
Well, I think they also give you a penny back or something like that if you bring your own bag. But,
Right.
But,
I think it's 10 cents.
10 cents.
Oh, maybe
Well,
it's a dime.
I hope so. I hope they do.
After reading, okay, well, I'm going to go continue with some facts, and then I'm going to do a little contrast situation here. Every year, based on I'm just going to spew out some facts. Earth.org, very great resource for a lot of environmental issues, is saying that every year 500 billion plastic bottles are produced globally.
Wow.
So think about the things I'm saying, and then I'm going to come back and address something. There are more than 150 million tons of plastic waste in the ocean. By 2050, plastics will take over wildlife in the ocean. And that's not very far away. 25 years, there's going to be more plastic than fish.
And that should alarm everybody.
Makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, and we wonder why, you can't get your favorite fish anymore.
Right.
Well, gee, you know why? Because they're choking to death, and they're eating these things, and it's also polluting the water.
Right.
And wrapping around their necks, and the animals are eating, they're eating it, and they're dying. Just that's a brief overview of what's happening with this.
Right. And I kind of wonder how... are we intentionally throwing plastics into the ocean, or are they just from the beach and they wash in? Or are some boaters are throwing stuff overboard? To me, the ocean is so big, and to imagine that much plastic there is just, oh.
Well, it's probably a combination of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are like, what's one bottle?
Right,
Well, guess what?
right.
One bottle times a bazillion.
Well, that leads me to, how long does it take for plastics to decompose?
It depends. Well, it would depend upon the plastic, that particular plastic. But I would say like a bottle where it has to be clean and sanitary, et cetera. Like a soda bottle, at least 25, 35 years.
Oh, you're pretty close. Oh. You're right on. Well, the minimum is 20 years. Yeah. Anywhere from 20 to 500 years.
Wow.
To break down plastic. And that's, paper a year. And paper isn't, I think it's biodegradable for the most part. But still, we don't want to throw paper out the window either.
No.
In 2020, we generated more than 500 million tons of plastic waste, 900% more than in 1980. So at the rate as our population grows, we're just filling it up with plastic. Okay, so when you throw a pop bottle away, the life of the plastic that you use it for is 12 to 15 minutes.
Yeah,
so
it's like sick.
It's sick. But after reading a lot of these articles, the summary is basically the culprit of this is the manufacturers of plastics, and not just a single person. It's because we promote it so heavily in this country, and we haven't shifted as they have in Europe. Now, I was reading a really interesting article from The Guardian that talks about how, particularly in France, because it's France-based, because it's an American man that lived in France and also came back to the U.S. after living there for a number of years and was just mortified by our plastic usage. So they have a lot of laws where they take a plastic or resin factory and they tell them, okay, you can't make this anymore, or you're going to have to make it differently. But they incentivize making packaging differently over there. And then they will utilize that information to make less plastic, so there's less plastics out there. For example, McDonald's has the most restaurants per capita in France, and they don't have any plastics. They use glass and paper. Yes.
I love that.
Right.
I had no idea.
Right. I'm not sure if there's a small percentage of plastic used, but look at that right there. Just think about how many
alone.
McDonald's we have here.
Right.
And if they changed it, yes, it would not be overnight. But you start with the big guy, you work it down to that's all that's available. And when then that's all that's available, you use it. Okay, it might be a little bit more money, but in the long run, the diseases, the off gases, everything that it's choking in this country will lessen, and we'll be used to how we're supposed to live our lives in a cleaner way.
Not to mention how plastic is a known endocrine disruptor. And when it leaches into our water system and gets into people's bodies, endocrine disruptors are control, well, obviously your hormones, and that could lead to cancer, and that could lead to issues with sex hormones. So there is a lot to examine with just that part. So anyway, I didn't mean to break your stride, but
Well, no,
it's a big hot button for me.
It just brings you down the rabbit hole that plastics lead to a lot of diseases. And they're very hard to diagnose that, oh, you got cancer from plastic. But look at the cancer rate alone. It's huge. Everybody's getting cancer. Okay, so in our country, we have lobbyists. And of course, the big pharma and the plastic producers, they're probably heavily lobbied in Washington. And that's where we don't enforce changes in our society like they do in Europe to make things better.
Do you mean incentivize or force changes? Which one?
Well, force changes and incentivize. Like they won't pass laws to say, okay, you have to make a certain percentage of glass or paper if you're going to make this much plastic, or just something to lessen the manufacturing of plastics.
Yeah, we certainly aren't there.
We're not there.
No.
And I'm sure it's because of it's political, it's money, and might as well just let people die,
Whatever happened to deposits? I remember growing up, I used to collect bottles growing up around here in, northern Illinois, Lake Bluff and Libertyville and stuff. We would collect bottles that people would discard, or we'd even go in the garbage can and grab the bottles, and we'd turn them in, and that was our money for our candy.
Exactly. Bottles and cans.
Yeah, bottles and cans.
Right. And I still see people picking up cans.
I think
there's not a lot of bottles anymore.
On the can, I saw Michigan on an aluminum can, aluminum is highly recyclable, so easy.
Right.
And it's light. So why are we not doing that? And I don't know if there are going to be kids who are going to still do that. I don't know where we are with our society with that, with kids going, oh, let's grab some bottles and we can, whatever. But honestly, there are a lot of people who are in dire straits who might grab those. Or you bring them back to the store and you get your money back. That's how it worked back then. Now, maybe it's not as feasible, but what made it feasible then and not now? These are questions that I just don't have the answers to, and I'm mystified completely. I don't know what the answers are.
And if anybody has any insight on answers to some of these questions, we're welcome to report back.
Yeah, we'd love your insight.
Please let us know. Also, there's a lot of microplastics. Do you know what microplastics are?
I certainly do. It's the breakdown of the plastics that get into our systems and they become our water, and they become tiny, tiny particles. And believe me, they are in our water system.
They are.
Anywhere.
And also it's a lot of the makeup and cosmetics.
In makeup
There's a lot of these micro little plastic things. As well as I was listening to a podcast that deals with my industry this week. It's called Business of Home. And it's all about the interior design industry. So I listen to it faithfully once a week. Or no, it's on twice a week, excuse me. And they interview designers. And the designers are constantly striving to be more sustainable and use more sustainable products. However, polyester's in everything in fabrics.
Polyester is plastic.
Right. Paint. This one designer was citing some sustainable paints, but she gave us some facts on how much paint leaches into our water that contain a lot of plastics. And so there's quite a bit of paint that's leached into our system that is very poisonous.
So latex paint also has plastic in it? Okay.
Yeah.
So just think about how much we're
Everybody uses
ingesting.
paint.
Just think about how much we're ingesting in our water, as filtered as it can be. Those little microplastics are still getting in there.
Right.
And that means you're drinking it. And even though you have systems, even reverse osmosis systems, these break down to such minute particles that it's still going to get in your system. And then it's going to start creating and growing cancers.
Exactly.
It's a petroleum product.
I want to get into what happened this week
Okay.
real quick, and then we could take a quick break.
What happened this week with plastics?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was on the news on March 7th. There was a plane situation, and it was all over the news. I believe I got this from NBC online. A flight out of Houston, Texas, took off, and immediately after takeoff, they were having engine problems.
Oh, no. Is this another Max story?
No, it's not a Max story. No.
Oh,
It's a
great.
plastic story.
What?
And there was bubble wrap that got sucked into the engine. And it got very dangerous. Luckily, right after takeoff, they circled and they did an emergency landing. So they weren't up at 35,000 feet, where who knows what would have happened if they lost engine power. And they landed and they were able to get the plastic out of the engine, and they had no idea how it got there. Well, I know how it got there in my little head. Basically, I'm sure it was floating around because those bubble wraps are just light and airy.
Yep.
And the engine, as we know, the engine sucks things in like birds.
Yeah.
And it got sucked in and it screwed up, a multi-million-dollar plane. Could have killed the whole plane full.
Oh, if they'd been at high enough altitude,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So that's just another example
Yeah.
of garbage in plastic. And that's, we'll talk about the garbage in plastic after our break.
Okay, we'll be right back.
As we were just talking about the plane that sucked in the plastic, ironically, everything a passenger is given on a plane is wrapped in plastic. So
All the food.
the airlines, they've got to make some changes. If you think about all the food, the forks, the cups. So we have to tackle this problem, and we can start here one by one.
Well, that's the only way this is going to happen, to really become a movement. Enough people, first of all, have to care. And that only happens, sadly, because humans, we are selfish creatures, when we have been affected personally.
Right.
And when someone gets affected personally, they're willing to make a change. And it's generally affected personally and not a good thing.
Right.
But the awareness of like what we're talking about here has to be imprinted upon people's brains and synthesized and accepted and like, oh yeah, this is a thing. And I don't know how that wholesale change is made, but I think you have to make it in small increments. And part of that is awareness, which is what we're trying to do here.
Just going to say that. Constantly
Yeah.
bring awareness to the table.
Yeah. So things we can do on our own.
Now, this topic is so big, we could talk about it for days, months, and years, I found after doing research. So anybody's feedback is welcome. We're just touching on some major bullet points and what we could do on a daily basis.
Well, I have some ideas. In fact, these are just drawn. Are we ready for that part now?
I think we are. I
Are
think
you?
we made some
Yeah.
impact about
I don't want to be.
Debbie Downer.
Well, now we're talking about solutions. These are some things that I personally do. So I'm drawing from my own personal experience. First of all, I will say both of my parents were extremely ecologically aware. And going back to I remember in the 50s, my father purposely using a completely natural fertilizer and never ever, on the lawn and things like that. And my mother, and part of it was they were war babies too. And so they would keep things, they would reuse things because they were used to it for the war effort. Okay. You find a way to reuse it, or you're going to put it somewhere. So the guys overseas can, but they kept that going on. And they'd also lived through the Depression, both of them. But these are things they passed down to me. There's always a use for something else. You can find a use for different things. A couple of the little things that I do, I keep the ties and then the little clips around the bread. I keep those and I pass those on. A lot of times, people who are in art, they use these things for their projects.
Right.
And so I brought them over to the Lake Bluff Library, and I brought them to other libraries. I've been doing this forever. I was doing this in California too.
Wow.
And artists will find a way. You think about some of the art you see. It's unusual sometimes, right? So that's one thing. Rubber bands, same thing. I can always find a use for a rubber band, and they come in a variety of items. I don't necessarily need to have a rubber band about every single shallot bunch that I buy, but there it is.
I know.
I go to farmer's market because they don't have all this packaging when I can, but,
that's
during the summer and fall, but,
Right.
They don't have all that.
Right.
I break down my cardboard boxes and I don't ever put anything more in the recycle bin than I can, because if moisture gets in there, I found that they do not want wet cardboard. It is either more difficult or impossible to recycle. So I make sure, I didn't fit it all in. I don't really order that much stuff anyway. But when I do have it, I'll put that out next week because I probably won't have as much. And then it fits and it doesn't get wet. Just some things I think about, but I break the boxes down. How difficult is that to do? I mean, come on. Putting, it's going to get wet or peed on by a dog or something.
Right.
So I wash out any tin cans I have for, dog food, or like I always, give dogs pumpkin, ground pumpkin or whatever, or anything I may buy in a tin can. Rinse it out, including the top that
The lid, yeah.
the lid, and wash it because they want it clean and dry. I remove the label
Right.
on the outside.
Oh my gosh.
And I dry. I mean, these are
You
little things.
are a poster child.
Not really. There are a lot more things I could do, but these are the things that we did growing up. We all recycled. Of course, aluminum. How difficult is that? Anything aluminum. And I try to buy things in aluminum. I will not buy soda pop. If I'm going to break down and have a soda pop, I'm going to buy it in a can or a glass, which it tastes better in glass anyway.
It does. Everything does.
So much better. Newsprint, that's an easy one. Even though a lot of people don't get papers anymore, we still get catalogs sometimes and newsprint and other things. Recycle that. It's a cinch. Worn out clothes. My clothes that are not good enough to donate to, say, Midwest Veterans Closet, Goodwill, Salvation Army, whatever your charity of choice might be. We have bins here, Lake Forest and Lake Bluff and across the country for textile donation. They take the textiles and they can use them. They can rework them into something else. Same with shoes. There's shoes beyond repair. A lot of people don't go to the cobbler anymore,
Right.
They just
cobbler.
don't. Well, that's
I know
the
what you
term,
mean.
right?
Right.
But I use the guy at the Lake Forest train station
I
all
do
the
too.
time
Yeah.
because he's a whiz. He's wonderful. And he makes it reusable again, resoling or whatever. But when you don't have that, they do have bins where you can repurpose your shoes. And now I don't know that they necessarily go to somebody else because it's hard to start wearing shoes where someone else is already. But some people do. If not, they can reuse those materials. Okay, good usable items, obviously. Don't just throw something out on the lawn because it's crap. Donate it. If it's crap, don't donate it, but do something with it. A lot of these things can be reworked and repurposed. Reduce, reuse, repurpose, recycle. It's kind of my mantra. The inner tube of a toilet paper, that's cardboard. Every inner tube that you
yes.
wind all the toilet, toss it in the recycle. It's cardboard. Canvas shopping bags, that's all I'll use. And if I end up buying too much, and I can't carry it out or I forgot my canvas shopping bag, I will say, okay, but I'll take a paper bag. I refuse to grab a plastic bag. I just won't. It almost won't taste good to me
Right.
if I buy something. But that's, my weird brain. I have mesh bags for my vegetables. So I don't grab those flimsy, absolutely
good
single
idea.
use. Yeah.
Yes.
And any plastic I do have, I find that plastic recycle thing at the grocery store and I stuff it in
Right.
there. But I use the mesh bags for fruits and vegetables and everything. I think that's about it. Those are the things that I do on a daily basis. And people think I'm wacky. I'm okay with that. I feel good about it, and I would feel bad not doing any of them.
Right.
And that's my thing. What do you got?
Well, I have a few, and I can't say I'm a poster child and I follow all the rules, but
I don't either all the time.
certainly think about it quite a bit more. Replace your Tupperware for glass or steel.
Mm-hmm.
And we received a gift of a bunch of glass Tupperware for Christmas because when my kids come over for dinner, they're constantly taking our containers home. And first of all, I love the glass. It's hearty. Like I said, I think the food tastes better. And that's pretty easy. And the glass will last a long time. And think of all the plastic Tupperware that you have in your house.
Reheat. You can reheat in the glass.
Right.
And if you reheat in the plastic,
Poison.
that's right.
You're eating
It's
poison.
leaching into your food.
Right.
PFAS, all those chemicals.
I touched on this a little bit before, avoid using cosmetics with microplastics.
How do we know what those are?
Well, there are cosmetics with those little beads.
Oh, I don't use those. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
no.
those. I thought those were outlawed.
I don't know, but it did say that this is from earth.org as
Okay,
well,
yeah.
that there are quite a bit of cosmetics with plastics in them. So I haven't read the label, but I should go to a store today and just check it out and see what might have it and what doesn't.
Yeah, that's a new one for me, but it makes sense.
Try to buy natural fibers when you're shopping. That's hard because natural fibers are so much more expensive and they don't wear as well, unfortunately, but friggin' everything has polyester or acrylic, and that's hard to get away from. But think about that when you're buying your clothing.
Well, those things don't breathe either.
They don't.
Yeah. Get smelly really fast.
And then just use a refillable water bottle. That was one of the number one things. How many people buy a water bottle every day? That's one bottle a day times one person times the whole United States. So population, 330 million water bottles
That's
a day.
just criminal, isn't it?
And now when I think about it, if I'm like super thirsty on the road and my water bottle's out, I'll go aluminum because I just, knowing how great what a great product it is compared to plastic, it's ridiculous. I just wish the big companies would stop making all their drinks in.
Well, here's the thing. They'll stop making them. They'll start or at least reducing their use and finding other ways when we stop creating so much demand. It's all about supply and demand.
You're right.
And that's why it comes down to each person doing something.
Right. And if they do small things, it could add up to a bigger change.
Because look how it's adding up the other way.
Right.
We're all doing this, and look where we are now. We have all these problems. It's really a simple equation.
It is. Buy less clothing and wash them only when necessary. A single wash can use 700,000 bits of microplastics to be released in the environment.
What? I don't understand that.
I don't either.
What are you washing? I mean,
Your clothes.
So there's microplastics in my cotton jeans?
It could be in the detergent.
Oh.
I bet. Well, I will look into that one. This is just a
Wow.
bullet point that doesn't have an exclamation.
It's just a question.
But
just
I
wondering.
understand buying less clothing, and we all have too many clothes, and I've really not just been buying clothes to buy clothes. I try to buy when I have an occasion and I have an event, and that's my excuse. Oh, I'm going somewhere, I have a wedding. Then I think, gosh, I'm going to a wedding in June, and I go, I think I already have 2 outfits. I don't have to buy a new outfit.
See?
So I was like, yay. I wasn't even thinking of it from a plastics or pollutant standpoint. I was thinking I don't have to spend money on more outfits.
And that's okay too. Shop your closet, as they say.
Right, yeah. Cleaning products. So many cleaning products come in plastics. So
Yeah.
what their advice, a bit of advice is to make your own cleaning products and just reuse those plastics if you have them. Or you can always find a glass bottle, vinegar, 3 parts water. Even my cleaning lady uses vinegar and water.
Well, and they're
it
less
works.
toxic.
Right. They're less toxic and you're not using up all the plastics. I got to go buy another plastic bottle of blah, blah. So rethink your cleaning products in that process. There's probably so many other ways, but those are some pretty easy ways that you as a consumer and one person can help. Just let's invest in a sustainable future and everybody can make a difference.
Yes, and that's the bottom line. That's kind of what the message we're trying to get across, and the message I try to tell myself every single day, like, okay, if I don't do this, I'm not contributing to that.
Yes.
You know, and it's just that simple. It's being mindful about the environment around us, which we're all affected by.
Right.
And don't just think, oh, the other person's gonna. No, it's you, your family, your extended family. It's everybody in the world. So if you make it personal, then maybe it starts to become more meaningful.
Right. And
I
you can
hope.
pass it down from family to family, as your family did, Lisa.
Yeah, well, I feel
You were ingrained.
Oh my gosh, I feel so fortunate that I grew up with that mindset and that awareness of things. I mean, my parents, I had a rocky childhood. I'm not going to lie. And if we ever get into that, well, fine. But, I recognize the things that were good, the things that were right, that were honest and straightforward, and that is one of them. Awareness of the ecology. In any event, that's kind of where we are on that. We're going to come back with a very light topic.
So hang in there. And
Yeah.
we're going to take a quick break.
Start thinking about the foods that made you want to barf when you were little. I just thought I'd just come out with, because that certainly happened to me.
Me too.
Were you a picky eater? We'll see. Be right back. Who didn't hate something when they were a kid as far as food? I don't know one person who doesn't curl up their nose and go, "Oh, I hate that," or "I hated that when I was a kid." Right?
Right. Oh, everybody has that, including me.
Really? What was yours?
When I was asked the question to come with a food that gives me the heebie-jeebies when I was a kid and still gives me the heebie-jeebies, liver and onions. Oh. And my mother would make it once a week.
Yeah, right. Because it was kind of a thing back then.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I've ever tasted it. I might have tasted it a couple times, like cementy ick. I just, the smell in the house. And my father loved liver and onions. He could eat it every day. So interestingly enough, before I left today, I asked my husband, I said, I know he likes it because he'll only order it in a restaurant.
Wait, he likes liver and
Oh,
onions?
he loves it. And I said, did you eat it as a child? He said, oh, I loved it as a child.
Oh, just the smell of it cooking
I
is...
go, something's wrong with you. But
Something's wrong
I go,
with
well,
you.
did your
That's nice.
siblings eat it as a child? He's like, I can't remember. Probably not. What child eats liver and onions? Ugh. So that was just some awful pasty thing. I could never eat it today. It's right there in my brain as the worst food. And I'm sure there's others. But Lisa, you have a whole story of foods you hated. I guess you were a picky eater.
Well, I don't often tell this story because it's disgusting. But, picky eater. The only things that I would eat as a kid were, I would eat ham, which now I won't touch, of course. But I would eat ham, and I would eat raw carrots, and I would eat tomato soup, but not tomatoes. Like weird. I can't even think of what else I would eat. Well, anything sweet, of course, but I'm talking about like the food that you're... I would, I was really young, and I would make toast for myself when no one was around, even though they didn't get busted, because, it smells like toast.
Right.
And then I would slather on butter and sugar and cinnamon, because I'm starving, because I didn't eat. And my family, I don't know about yours, but my family was the kind where you stay at the table until you finished it. And liver and onions, yeah. Overcooked vegetables of all kinds.
Mush, yeah.
Like mush nauseated me.
Right.
And my liver and onion story. Okay, I'll lead with the gross one first. I would be forced to eat, like my mother, you're eating that. And so and I'm crying the whole time, and then I would take a sip of water, and I could still taste it.
Oh.
And by this time, I'm a little kid, and I'm really sick to my stomach. So finally I thought, well, here's what I'll do. I'll just really just jam a big piece down my throat just to get it over with, and I'm going to drill my glass of milk. Okay, well, no sooner had that gone down
Uh-oh.
and then it came up all over the dining room table. And the only good thing about that was that they never made me do that with liver and onions again. But
yay,
there were other things. And as I said, I hated pretty much everything. I was, skinny as a stick, and they were worried about it. And because of that, I had to take this special vitamin. Did you ever hear of Vidalin?
No.
Okay, it's a liquid vitamin that they would give to kids, if you're too tiny to drink or to eat, take a pill, a vitamin pill.
I see. Right.
Yes, this is a liquid vitamin, and I would be given this every day. And then one day I saw where she kept it, and I loved it because it was really sweet. It tasted kind of just like syrup. It was wonderful. Probably high fructose corn syrup,
Right.
I don't know. And vitamins. But I saw where she hid it, and I'm like, ooh, she's outside doing gardening. So I climbed all the way up to the top of the counters, and I'm up there at the very top where it's being kept. Because I must have tried doing it before, like drinking it before, and then so I saw where she put it. I go up there. I chug like half this bottle. And okay, and this is like one of those things. It's good in small doses, but it could be toxic, that many vitamins, so
Right.
so I'm like, she comes in and she sees there's like half left. And I'm like, oh, I finally feel full.
Oh.
I got in so much trouble. And then she has to call Dr. Proxmire to have him come down and look at me again, Okay. Then another time, I wasn't eating, wouldn't eat. And I went out in the garden. My older brother had a really wonderful vegetable garden in the back. And there was nothing left. It was like the fall, so nothing was really left. So there was some carrots, and they were kind of wizened and old and not good. But I was so hungry. It was like Scarlett O'Hara, like standing there, and she's pulling things out of the ground because she's starving to death. You know what I mean? When I finally saw Gone with the Wind, I went, oh, that was me in the garden. Because I was so hungry because I wouldn't eat my dinner and, whatever. And so I thought, well, I could eat these carrots. So I start shoving these carrots, which apparently they get sulfurized or something or become sulfurate.
Oh,
yeah, I don't know
okay.
what happens. Something bad happens to them. And I ate a bunch of them, and I started blowing up, like having an allergic reaction and blowing up. Yeah, so Dr. Proxmire again comes down from Wisconsin, comes down to our home in Libertyville. Again, he's like, what is going on here? And here, I saved the best for last.
Okay.
Did you like peas growing up?
No.
Okay, I hated peas also. I mean, I hated everything, but I really hated peas. Well, finally, I'd be left at the dining room table for a long time. They would just finally we're not going to sit here any longer. So I'm just sitting there with my plate, sitting. Finally, I thought, I can't go out and play until I eat. So all the peas, I took them and I shoved them in my underpants.
Oh, gross.
But I put them on. I was like, I ate them. I'm good. Okay. I went out into the field that separated. It was not built up the way it was,
Right.
And I emptied out my underpants, and I kept doing this every time we'd have
Peas.
peas,
Or-
or like I don't know, whatever overcooked vegetable, whatever. Finally, all of a sudden, I hear these hushed whispers. Oh my God, whatever, should take her to the doctor. She obviously got an infection, whatever. They take me to the doctor. They've got the underpants.
Oh,
they're
my
going,
gosh.
what's going on here? Like, and he's like, she looks fine, whatever. And then he looks at me, he goes, a light bulb must have gone off in his head.
Yeah.
And he goes, what? I said, well, it's peas. I put the peas in my underwear and then I empty them out.
Oh my gosh. You had to confess that to the doctor?
Because otherwise I think they were going to start playing with my head, and maybe they had figured it out and they were just going, okay, this is your come to Jesus moment, little
Right.
Lisa.
Oh, how funny. Oh, that's hilarious.
Is that
you were
the most-
always scheming up things.
Well, whatever, just to escape the torture of being a child. But it's pretty twisted, isn't it?
yeah, that's twisted.
It was kind of
It's funny that
smart.
you were so picky and now you're picky too.
Well, yeah.
Not picky, but you're more regimented on eating healthy foods.
Yeah.
Right.
Now it's completely different.
not
now
like-
I can't eat enough vegetables. I love it just, but I don't
funny.
overcook them either.
Right. Well,
They're
back
not
in
mush.
the day, everybody boiled vegetables
Yeah.
until they were like solid mush and they just tasted blah. No flavor,
Nothing.
awful. But they'd say, eat your vegetables.
Yeah.
When you brought up tomatoes, it's funny that you say that
Yeah.
because I don't like tomatoes. I like tomato soup.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember every holiday season, my mom would make tomato aspect salad.
Ew, that Jello
Oh,
stuff.
it was so awful. So
Oh God, my ex-mother-in-law used to make that, and I would just be barfy.
Me too. Maybe that's why
Oh.
I don't like tomatoes because there's the aspect salad and you put it on a big piece of lettuce and it was awful. It was just, oh.
And there would be pieces of celery floating
Yes.
in there too,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. I couldn't figure out what was the most repulsive part of it.
I know. It's just, so I don't like tomatoes, but I can eat them certain ways in
Yeah.
soup and.
Oh, see, I love them. I eat them like an apple
no.
now, but
I
you know,
I don't. like them.
Nobody's making me eat them too, so I guess that there you
No
go.
gun to head.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is weird because it lasted all the way through high school, and then as soon as I got to college, all of a sudden I went, "Oh, what's this? A salad bar?" And I went, "Oh, broccoli, raw broccoli. That's really good." I know, and all of a sudden my stomach is going insane because it's never had these things because I've never allowed them in.
Right. To readjust.
Right, and suddenly I'm like, I like these. I like lettuce. I like. So, it's
Yeah.
all about oppression, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, that's our week. A little heavy with the environment and a little light
Right.
with the gross foods.
the gross foods. Well, everyone follow us on Instagram. Sign up for our podcast.
Follow on your podcast and subscribe. That's what
Follow
I
and
think we're
subscribe.
forgetting.
Hello.
Yeah.
Follow and subscribe. Send us some questions that you have at our Gmail address at ladieswhoquestion@gmail.com. Check out our Facebook. And
And let us know what gross food you avoided as a child because I want to make sure I'm not alone doing my weird stuff.
okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Harvey. Ladies Who Question is executive produced and edited by me, Lisa Dominique, and also executive produced by Holly Caulfield. Holly also does most of our research, and Claire Caulfield is in charge of technical assistance and social media. Music, My Lionheart. Sketch music by Florian Manx and Matthew Anderson. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, follow, rate, and review Ladies Who Question on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Send your thoughts to ladieswhoquestion@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and our website, ladieswhoquestion.com.
All content discussed on Ladies Who Question are the opinions of Lisa Dominique and Holly Caulfield and should not be construed as advice of any kind. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as advice of any personal or medical issue for yourself or others. This disclaimer also applies to guests or contributors to the podcast.